Hi, and welcome to another episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed, the Mind Management Mentors podcast. As always, bringing you new guests to talk about everything that's within the mind. And there is so much in the mind. I felt there's only one person I could reach out to, and that was the fabulous Tess, who runs her own company, which is called Mind Blocks. But Tess, always getting people past those blocks. Tess, introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from, what you do, and how much you love being Testy.
Well, hello, Cuddy, and it's great to be here. So, yes, I am Tess Day, and Mind Blocks is my coaching business. I am based up in Aberdeen in Scotland, but my territory is global. As long as people speak English, I am more than happy to work with them. I've been in the coaching industry for 18 years, and I help people not only start and grow their businesses, but I help that business owner transform their own development so they can be the best leader in their company.
Fantastic. Now, we kind of already set up a title for this podcast.
Yep.
And that's where we're going to talk around. And it's funny you said, what about talking English? What about if anybody can talk South African? Lekker, lekker.
Ek kan 'n bietjie van die taal praat.
Yes! They're not just the English language,
Afrikaans
also
is
Afrikaans.
absolutely, and a bit of Dutch because my dad was Dutch, but yeah, that's more translation. Do you know, recently I had a conversation through TikTok with someone from Germany using a translation app, and I communicated in German with them, and we had an amazing conversation. I was just doing translation all the time, replying in German and asking them questions, speaking to them in their own language. So that was interesting.
Ooh, TikTok. That's a big find. I like that.
Yeah.
That's you. Oh, Tess, we're gonna have to chat about that. I love that. How you can do that on TikTok. TikTok's a really. I was quite dubious about going on TikTok at first, to be fair.
Well,
I
I
don't
see
know
you're
how
blowing up there.
because I like the concept of it. I genuinely didn't at first because I was like, oh, I want, because as I'm true, and look, this is actually a perfect way. We're both creatives, and for anyone who's in that creative space, there's so much chaos in the world, and we don't. The calm is where we get to create. Is where we get to create. That's where the ideas come, and then the chaos helps it grow a little bit. But we have to find that calm. And today's podcast is all about from chaos to calm for creating.
Perfect.
And
Yeah,
that's what we're
I
going to be
love that
talking
subject.
about.
Yes,
Tess.
because the calm is inside, right, Cody? We have to find that stillness inside, that solid base, that core of us, where we know who we are, we know what we're about. And then when we're solid and calm, we can step out into the chaos and not be blown around by it.
Absolutely.
It's a
Now,
life's work.
most of my personal creativity has always come from, believe it or not, meditation. That's I know, and because I always talk to a monkey mind about the conversations that we have that stop us moving forward, and meditation, and very much breath work that I do now, and things like that. Meditation and that calm. If we can't find calm and we're stuck in that chaos, the ideas that you're trying to grab onto are going to fly by because there's too many ideas. However, in that moment of calm is when the beautiful idea that comes out, oh, I need to hold on to that one. That's what I'm going to hold on, and I'm going to start focusing on that. So how do you help with mind blocks? How do you help people find calm when creative minds come from chaos? How do you help their Tess?
Well, first of all, I get to know the client or the person in front of me and I let them talk. I listen. Because what I want to do is I want to tap in and understand through their behavior, their movements, their words, and their thoughts, which are coming out through their communication, what is going on. So tapping in. And as I hear that, what happens is something comes down to me as to pinpointing a starting point with them. So some people might show up really calm on the outside, but there is a tornado going on inside, and they've learned how to mask it and hide it. Okay. Okay. I have been master of that myself, by the way.
Well, it's funny, but when covering the cat, you're absolutely right. I think we all there's so many of us that have that ability to be able to put a face on it, in all fairness, which I think comes to the old term, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Now, what if you didn't have to fake it to make it? Would be a better concept for people, because they do feel like they're not being themselves until they make it. So when they make it, they're like, well, who am I?
Exactly.
And that can be a bigger sort of conflict once the success is there, but I faked it to make it. So have I really made it? I mean, that's a massive conflict. How do you help? Because coaching, the beauty of coaching is, and I always say this, is don't come to me when it's too late. Come to me as a mind management coach. I'm like, let me help you get there. There's a difference. There's a difference. So for you, Tess, what's a creative is looking for what when it comes to you?
What they're looking for is something probably a lot of people have heard before, is finding their why, their purpose, and their reason. Now it doesn't have to be a deep exercise. A lot of people, when they hear I've got to find my why, I've got to find my purpose, they think, oh, now I have to dig into the sort of crevices of my mind and come up with something meaningful and powerful. But really, what is your driving force? If somebody can pinpoint what their reason is, what their values are, what gets them motivated every day, and it often springs back to our early life.
Yeah.
What experiences we've had. What was the thing that we used to dream about when we were allowed to dream as a child, before we went into maybe the schooling system where we had to follow processes and rules? Tapping into that, if you know what your driving force is, then there's a lot of calm that automatically settles. I help people find that. And once they know that, then we can build a business around that as their core. Doesn't matter what they're doing, whether they're an artist, whether they're an interior designer, whether they're an accountant. What is the reason you do what you do? I know for me, when I did the exercise, I discovered that one of the things I struggled with growing up was the ability to express myself. Duh, and I can talk for Britain, but I didn't know how to take what I was feeling inside and articulate it out to people. So I tended to feel like I was in this prison of my thoughts and my feelings, and often felt the sense of rejection because nobody was sort of attracted or coming into my space because I was covering. So I did the exercise, and it was actually beginning of 2020 when we went into that period of time where nobody was allowed outside. And I explored back using Simon Sinek's process of finding your why. And I realized that my purpose in life is to help people find their voice. Okay. And once you know what your message is, you can then shape a business around that. So we go through that process. We look at your personality profile. We look at what your driving factors are. So those are all very external things. But when you meet yourself on the outside, okay, and then you can bring it into yourself, and now you have to make decisions about your business or about your personal life or any aspect, and that is your center point. Everything becomes easier. You know how to say what to say yes to, you know what to say no to. And at that point, we can then start building something and remove masks.
I love that. So, especially about removing the masks that we often find ourselves wearing. So, when it comes to, let's use the word masks. What masks have you worn over the years, Tess?
The perfect person. I'm perfect. There's nothing. My life on the outside looks perfect. Nobody knows that there's stuff going on in the background. Nobody knows that I'm doubting myself when I walk into a room, but this was my driving thoughts in the background. I'm nervous. I'm uncomfortable. I don't fully believe in myself.
Mm.
Am I worth it? You know, who's going to really rate me?
Mm.
But when I walk in the room, I pull up the mask and I pretend that it's all perfect. But there's a disconnect with that. You don't connect with people when you behave like that.
Yes.
So that is a mask. The other mask is where you actually can't get out at all.
Yeah.
You almost become like a hermit trapped within your own thoughts.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
And that's the exhaustion people go through. And I know we Tess, I know we kind of work in a similar space. Sorry, that's the dog. I know we work in a similar space where we help people unblock their subconscious blocks. But you talked about being a business coach for a while and a life coach.
Yes.
And you found a synergy in fusing those together. So you call yourself a entrepreneurial life strategic coach.
Yes.
Did I get it right?
Strategist.
A strategist. A strategist. I love that.
Yeah.
And why did that suddenly become the thing for Tess? How did that suddenly come about for Tess?
Well, the penny dropped for me when I realized when I'm in front of a business owner and we are busy putting the plan together, we're looking at pricing, we're looking at product offering, target market, all that very technical stuff that you need to know to be able to operate properly. There were barriers in certain areas from the business owner, confidence levels, doubts, and a lot of that sprung from past life.
Yeah.
You know, childhood or upbringing or things like that. Or an experience when they worked in a corporate industry where they were performing a particular function, got very used to being the marketing arm in the company or the financial arm in the company. And suddenly they had to transition from just doing that one particular thing to having to be a business owner that touches on multiple areas to make a business successful. And so it was developing their mindset so that they could lead as a business owner with confidence because they knew their why and they could stop trying to pretend. They could ask for help. I think that is really the key. You know, when I know in my own experience, when I started my business, it was very much, I'm supposed to know it all. So when I go out there, I have to look like I've got the marketing sorted, I've got the comms sorted, I've got everything in place. But when I'm sitting at home, I'm like, where can I ask for help? How do I ask for help? You know? So I think what I looked at is I looked at my own challenges when I started out. I moved to a new country. I'm from South Africa. I came to the UK in 2005. And I only started my own business when I moved over to the UK. So I had no recollection or memory about how to be a business owner because I didn't even do that in South Africa. So it was very much starting from the baseline. For me, personal development has been a key aspect to my business being able to grow and thrive.
And when you say personal development, what do you mean by personal development?
I'm talking about what goes on in my thinking process. What drives those thoughts based on the influences that I've had in my life.
Correct.
And whether I respected or valued those people. And because of that trust in them, I took on board what they said and I did not think about what I actually thought about it. So often we take on advice from others, right? But we forget to actually say, how do I feel about that? What does that mean for me? And through that, I think a lot of people experience a lot of failure. Okay, because they're driving something with external guidance, but they're not actually stopping to say, how does that align with me? Yes. And I think in the business coaching world, I get a lot of feedback from people to say, I go and work with a business coach, and I'm not ditching business coaches because they have a place, right? But often they've got a process or they've got a plan and they say, okay, so how much do you want to grow the business by, or what do you want to achieve? And then they set a plan in place and then they go, all right, off you go, make it happen.
Mm.
But one thing I do know, and it's I don't think it's really a quote, but it's the person who sets the goal is not actually the person who achieves it. It's who you become along the way. So when we set a goal or we set a plan in place, the person setting it hasn't become the person that can achieve it yet. So there's a developmental process we go through. So that's why we must fail. Okay, and I'm not saying big fail like millions of pounds of failure on the table, but what I'm saying is we need to become comfortable with not succeeding in every aspect because we learn from discomfort, we learn from failure.
We we're going to touch on that. So I just did my 10-minute presentation for the BNI today.
Okay.
And they asked me what's your key to success? And I went, failure. Just
Oh,
getting comfortable with failure. It's
yeah.
gonna happen. We don't like it. It humbles us. It's the best recipe for success. The best recipe for success is failure. Facts. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. So when we're talking about failures, because we've had this conversation before personally, but we're talking about those failures. What's some of the best failures you've had, Tess? They might not be the biggest, but let's start getting that conversation out there for understanding the power of failure. So what's some of your best failures and what were your gifts out of those failures, Tess?
Well, I'd say a big failure for me was when I first arrived in the UK and I decided to import a range of products from South Africa. I was going to be the distributing lead for a beauty product from South Africa in the UK. That was the goal. So the products arrived, I think it was 18 months into the business. I'd started growing a team. I had the most incredible people that I was training up, leading, coaching actually at the time. And I had my second child. He was 4 months old. So I had two under two, starting a business.
I'm not a parent,
And
but I know what 2-year-olds are like. So yes.
and a partner who traveled. So I was new in the country. So there were a lot of challenges that I was facing, but somehow there was this dogged determination that I was going to succeed. Why not? And then one of the directors came over from South Africa to attend a beauty show with me. And while on that exhibition, the kids' nursery couldn't have them the second day because of a burglary. So I couldn't attend. Can you imagine? You want to go play, and somebody says, you're not allowed to play because you've got other responsibilities. The biggest lesson that came from me there was that on that day that I didn't attend, a guy approached the South African director and said, we've got 600 salons and we want to put your product in all of our outlets, but we don't want to deal with a middle person. She had a contract in her briefcase which she held on to and told me that she wanted to have a conversation with him first before deciding whether they would give me the distribution agreement for the UK.
Mm.
And today I would have fought for my space in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, I lost all confidence in myself. I thought they didn't believe in me. So I pulled out.
Mm.
And I gave it all up. And I cried for 3 days.
What was, looking back now, what was the reason you let, was it because you wanted to be what did you believe was the reason that you let that one by?
Well, at the time, I thought it was because they didn't believe in me.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think we all have a particular destiny in life. We have a journey that we're on that we need to fulfill.
Mm.
After those 3 days, my kind of sensible mind started coming back. The victim in me started
Yep.
getting quiet. And I thought, okay, so Tess, let's look at this business. Do you love the beauty industry? Is that what it was? Do you love spreadsheets in business? What was the thing about that business you loved the most? And you know what it was? It was empowering those women to start up their own home industry so they could provide extra income while they were raising their children, perhaps put money aside for family holidays, while their partner was out there providing for maybe the basic needs of the household. And that's what really inspired me. And at those days, I went on the www World Wide Web, because it was back in the day, and I did some research. Always having had an interest in psychology and counseling, I looked at that, but part of me has always been future focused, and I always perceived the counseling angle a focus on very much what has happened, and let's unpick that. And I wanted to say we can't change what's happened, but what we can do is grow forward. So I discovered coaching, and so I sort of decided to go back to school. And I went and did a 2.5-year coaching program, focusing on all of life.
Yeah.
And that in itself was a gift to me, because I learned so much about my own development. And it was as I was qualifying in that we moved from England to Scotland.
Yes.
And I haven't looked back.
There's not a chance. When you move to Scotland, there's not a chance you look back. Scotland is stunning.
It is beautiful. And actually, there's a lot of things about Scotland that I think about, and I see Cape Town, South Africa.
So I'm originally from Yorkshire, and there's a place in Yorkshire called Woodhead, which is the back road from Sheffield to Manchester. Instead of going around the motorways, you can go through the hills. And I always, whenever me and my wife are driving around Edinburgh or going up the A9 up to Pitlochry and all that, I'm like, it's Woodhead. It's Woodhead. My wife will always say, oh, this looks like Woodhead. There's so many, and for anyone that's like listening to, oh, Scotland's stunning. It is. There's not. I don't think anybody moves to Scotland and goes, oh, this wasn't the right decision. I just don't think you can, because it's such a stunning place, and there's so many. We live as the crow flies between St Andrews and Edinburgh. So I'm blessed that 20 minutes that way I've got Edinburgh, and 20 minutes that way I've got St Andrews, and you've got these stunning spots to go to. I love Scotland. I knew there'd be no regrets about moving to Scotland. So Tess, that was a powerful lesson that you learned. And when I'm working with clients, I'm always saying, and I like how you said, I want to be able to grow forward.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're working with clients, and I know that we share that space sometimes, we have to heal the past before we can grow forward. Yep. And a lot of that, absolutely, helping people heal that past or pull the root out. I always say I'm like a dentist of the mind, because I need to get to your core roots so I can pull it out, wave it at you, and go, is it true or not? And then we throw that one away, and then your entire nervous system resets and recalibrates. And then the next time you think that belief's going to pop up, or the trigger, you're like, oh, it's not there anymore. Oh, wow, that's the power of mind management. And I'm sure that's the same with mind blocks. So that was a fantastic story of failure and the success that came from it. Give me another big, beautiful failure of Tess Days, because I don't think there's enough there, Tess. You're not telling everybody enough failure. Let's tell them more about the success of failure.
Gosh, putting me on the spot here. I'm normally the one on the other side of the table, so this is a very vulnerable place to be.
It is, and we need to share that vulnerability. Yes, it is scary.
Yeah.
And lift it off the mask, Tess.
Yeah. I think in my coaching business, when I started coaching, I was learning as I was going, and so I came up with a business idea and I started it, and I went as far as I could, and then I thought, okay, change again. So I've changed my coaching business over the 18 years. I've reinvented myself again and again, because what I thought, based on what I knew at the time, was just one level. So as I evolved and as I grew, the business had to grow with me. I have 2 failed marriages.
Right.
That's a painful one.
When you are the
No, I said with a smile, because that's the mask. Okay. That's the mask.
Right.
It is really uncomfortable when you are the driving force behind ending something. I feel pain when my brain says this is not working anymore.
Yeah.
And for my survival, I have to go.
Was
and
it
tear things down.
was it just your survival? Was it the family's survival? Because you've got two kids as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think they would see it as it was a good decision,
Hmm.
you know, because they were young and they didn't understand all the intricate workings, and there was no reason to break up either. Not
Right.
on, I have now got a best friend. When people sometimes grow in different directions, it can be very painful to stay together.
Yeah.
So that was two huge failures because I went in very optimistic, mask and all. Da-ding, da-ding, da-ding. No, but on a serious note, I think for me, I don't see them as failures because I have no regrets.
There's a gift.
And both of my husbands have been the most incredible people, and my first husband passed away recently, so he's not with us anymore. Um, and that was interesting to go through. But to be able to consciously uncouple
Yeah.
and not destroy everything was, for me, a very important thing to go through because I see so many people break up and it's so painful and so destructive. So although it is a failure, I think we're all stronger for it.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many areas of failure. Attempting a small thing in my business where I decide to do a workshop
Yeah.
and nobody signs up,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
We've all been there.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
you know.
100%. Yeah. I think that the success in the failures and understanding, and I think this, do you know, to be fair, I think this might be a Brendan Burchard. I got quite into Brendan Burchard quite
Oh,
a
yeah.
while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to have some great variations of why he learned and became who he was with the high performance, is understanding the power of doing a sign up, no one signing up, and then most people walk away, which is why your why has to be so much stronger. Because the why, I think for a lot of people, is not about money, it's about service, isn't it? Let's be
Yeah,
clear. I think
yeah.
coaches come from a place of learn from my mess up so that you don't have to. But sometimes the lessons are in the mess up, which is why I'm always, when people do mess up, I'm like, we need it. We need that. It makes us stronger. I think that the big belief in failure is it makes us weaker. And I always ask a lot of, and I've been working with a lot of ladies at this moment in time as well, with grief
Okay.
and things like that.
Mm,
And
mm,
I'll always ask them, how do you feel? And they'll say, I just feel weak and exhausted. I'm like, but tell me how you feel weak and exhausted when you sat here strong, smiling. Is that
mm-hmm.
what's your version of strength? And they went, oh my God, to be able to sit here, smile, and I'm still here. That's strength, isn't it? It's the meaning that we create to what strength is. In ladies and gentlemen, we already have it. We just have to make that connection to it, don't we? And Tess, you're one of the strongest people that I've met, which is why I wanted to get you onto the podcast, because I knew there was some stories there, and
Mm.
especially about the failures, talking about the failures so people can hear about those failures. I think it helps other people's journeys, which is the big part, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was one client I had, I was working with his staff,
Mm.
worked with them for about 2 years. And one of the things that his mantra was fail fast and fail forward. And I love that because what he was saying to them was, let's go in and let's try things and let's fail, because if we fail, we can then reflect, measure, and we can go again. But if we hold on to things and we try and tweak and make it perfect all the time, we're actually micromanaging a situation and we are actually creating more confusion. And I would imagine with your work as well, with your clients, when you're dealing with what their challenges are, the sooner you can get clarity in a situation,
Mm-hmm.
the sooner they can extract it, the parts that are no longer relevant,
Yeah,
and then you can build something new in place.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. I wrote down something and I want us to talk about that. And I know this is going to open up a lot of conversations, because I think I'm creating a new course, and one of the sections of the course is stop giving advice. Stop listening to
Oh,
advice. Stop giving advice. And the purpose
Yes.
of that is, and I know we're going to talk about that,
Yeah.
is advice comes from a perspective of somebody else's pain and teachings. And when you
And
ask somebody for advice, you're taking on their pain and their
yeah.
perspective, which is not the perspective you need. So as
No.
coaches, it's
Yeah.
like stop giving advice. Don't do it. If someone asks you for advice, take the stance of, I think you've got a great question there, but what's the advice you think you could take away? So how you can change the language of situations. So why is it? You can understand why people are walking around going, well, this is all wrong. This is all absolutely messed up. So listen to this podcast and listen to this podcast. This person says this person. That's the problem with advice, isn't it?
Chaos.
It's chaos. If you're the kind of person that's on that, it is chaos. What a great wrap up. Is you've got advice. You're taking the perspective away from where the answer is, which is here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're forgetting the power of self because of the masks, because of the identity, because of the failures.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, I always talk about this, is we've got the answers here. You just need to find it. We just need to find whatever it is, your why or the subconscious block is that the big power in let's go here. There's no advice. You've got all the advice you need. Stop listening to friends and families. I mean, how many, especially for you, Tess, I'm sure the same thing. When you said you were going into the coaching industry, did people? I know what they said to me when I first started. Oh, you can't do that, could he? Oh no, what? No. Oh no, you're going to leave that and to go and do that. Oh, you need to look into this, and this for that. And they didn't even know what coaching was. And I was like, no, you actually can work with mental health. You can work with mindset and things like that. So what was some of the advice that you maybe did take on that was the biggest bullshit that you'd ever heard, Tess?
I don't know if it's advice that I took on. It's that I decided to open myself up and be an absolute sponge, which actually created a spiral of confusion. Because like you said, what I didn't do in those early days was pay attention to my own inner guidance system because I didn't know it existed. I didn't know I had a voice inside of me that if I slowed down and was quiet, I would hear it.
Yeah.
And the thing that really frustrates me sometimes is when I say to people, oh, you went for a lovely walk in the forest. And they go, yeah, and I was listening to this podcast. And I said, so did you see the stream? Did you notice that tree? No, I just got my steps in. I did 10,000 steps, Tess. And it was a great podcast. So of course, conundrum, I do my own podcast now. And now no one's going to, on my advice, go listen to it while they're walking in the forest, because people are afraid of that little voice inside. Okay. The moment
monkey
we
mind,
meet,
the judgment. Yep, absolutely.
the moment that voice pops up, a whole lot of stuff starts coming out. Okay. And people want to avoid that at all cost, like a balloon that you're trying to keep underwater, right? It doesn't work.
No.
We have to have a little bit of grit and a little bit of courage to let that mess, I say, a little bit of what we feel is this mess come up.
Yeah.
And that's where someone like you, probably more than me, but in your line of work with what you do, is you can really help people hear that and feel safe as it comes up.
Yes. Yes. I actually, one of the testimonials from one of my clients was, oh my God, I just rabbited on verbal diarrhea 55 minutes. And then Cuddy was like, you all right? Yeah. Oh, I've never felt better about it. I'm like, yeah, Cuddy didn't judge me. And that's the word judgment, isn't it? It's judgment. Whenever we have those explosions, it's the judgment. And that just feeds into our own judgmental voice. And I often say that to a lot of people, as if you want to not have the fear of judgment, stop judging others. It always comes from a place of self. Wow.
I'm doing a lot of reading Dr. Joe Dispenza at the moment.
Joe Dispenza's great.
It's quite high level in that I think he talks a lot about the chemical makeup of the brain and how our thoughts can actually change our chemical composition in our body. And that then gives out a sense of a feeling or an emotion. And so that can actually dictate our experience. So if we change our thoughts, we can change our life.
I used that was the first. Do you know it's not just about. You're right. Changing your thoughts is 100% right. So what to touch on what we talked about there, and I've just mentioned this to someone else, is why do we get stuck in that victim mindset? Why do people get stuck in the woe is me, the story? And I think because of the chemicals, people don't understand the power of the chemical that our thoughts are creating. It's not just that they're creating a thought. When everybody has a woe is me story, the whole world's against me, or we tell a story that without knowing, so a lot of people don't realize that the story they're telling creates an emotion in other people, which is genuinely pity or sorrow or, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling like that. And they give them a touch. They just say, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling that. That gives a chemical response within somebody else, oxytocin. If I touch somebody when they're having a bad day, that depression story creates oxytocin, which is a happiness chemical. So the body subconsciously and unconsciously goes, oh, if I tell that story, it gives me a happiness chemical. So we get stuck in the downward spiral story, and we're creating the happiness chemical from depression. And that is for a lot of people, they don't realize why they get stuck and they can't move away from that story. So there's so many things that we can do to change our life, change our language, change our story, change our thoughts, actually change our physicality just by changing our body. It changes, it
Posture,
can break the
you know?
yes, just pop the Amy Cuddy superhero pose. I
Yeah.
don't use her term because that's how I call myself, Cuddy, but I remember reading the book and I'm like, it changes the physiology. Breath is, and I always say breath is the elixir of life for people. Breath will, for stress, for overwhelm, it will absolutely create that calm. So this was a beautiful conversation, Tess. Is there any other words of wisdom, not advice, that Tess wants to
Yeah.
share with the world?
I would say, don't, like you said, don't seek your answers from the outside world. Spend time, some would say it's inquiry. Inquire. Journaling is maybe something people put down to, oh, everybody's journaling, you know, but it's a very powerful medium. If you can't meditate, if you, meditating is a very difficult thing. We always imagine it like crossed legs, like Buddha, if you've got an overactive mind, that is something that is really absolutely difficult to do. So journaling with the right kind of calm music can help you center your thoughts. I think we need to start having a relationship with ourselves first. I think as we start to connect with ourselves, our inner self, then when we go and seek guidance, we would know who we're looking to work with and why. And then it is not advice that we are just taking in that is random. It's actually directed based on what the experience is that we're having. Okay? Then when somebody is with you and they say, I've been on this sort of hermit journey for the last 6 months, I've got some questions. Can we have a conversation? You can then draw out more from them. That's what I do with certain people. I listen to the unfolding of a story, and then ask questions, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
The
When I'm
power
having,
of solitude.
yes. And whenever I'm having podcasts, there's always a book that pops up, and I share the same couple of books, but I'm going to share a different book today. For anyone that watches the podcast, I'm an avid reader of books, and I'm going on holiday on Friday, so I'm looking for a new book. I found something that I'm going to be taking with me, but I want to share a book with people that's listening. I'm sure you've read it. If you haven't, Tess, you'll be like, oh my god, I need that on my list. And it's The Courage to be Disliked.
Now, I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Right.
Yes.
Now I'm going to tell everyone, I think you should get it on audiobook. And I want to tell people why. Because I listened to it on audiobook and I'm like, I don't know how that would make a book. But the audiobook, there's a story. And it's the story about anxiety. It's a story about overwhelm. It's a story about stress. And it's the story about a philosopher, Japanese. I think the author is Futsi Kami Koyoshi, something like that. Something Japanese. Now, the audiobook is a story between a philosopher and a 16-year-old boy who's challenging the philosopher.
Oh.
And every chapter is a different challenge on his philosophy. Obviously, his philosophy is correct. He's a philosopher. And the whole story of this 16-year-old boy, well, no, I need to challenge this. Why? What do you mean I'm creating my own anxiety? Well, anxiety creates a focus. It gives us something. It gives us an identity, and it gives us a power over other people. If I'm constantly sat in my room saying, I've got anxiety, I can't go out. This is chapter 1, by the way. And the young people, well, why would we do that? Because it gives you control. It gives you a sense of love that's lacking. If I don't have anxiety, who am I? And that becomes part of identity.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful book, and I read it twice, but it was audio book when I was cycling. So I used to cycle on a canal from Edinburgh to Glasgow, and there's no roads, there's no cars around, so you can listen to an audio book. And that book and that story for anybody is one of the books that I think, go and read The Courage to be Disliked. It's such a powerful book. He's got another book, but it wasn't as good. There was another book that he did, The Courage. It was something about hope or love. I didn't resonate with it at all. But The Courage to be Disliked is a powerful, life-changing book for people. Tess.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Mind Management Mentors podcast.
It was a pleasure, and well overdue. I think it was almost about a year ago that we spoke about this. But I feel like the person today in front of you is not the same person that spoke to you a year ago. So it's a blessing.
Either of us are.
No.
I don't think either of us are.
Yeah.
And I'll share that me and you had a very vulnerable conversation about the bullshit that goes on in the journey of becoming a coach and the person that wants to help people. It's not easy. It's soul destroying sometimes. And I think we had that open chat, and I think that's what helped us resonate so well together. And that's why the podcast has come about.
And I love what you do. I love your podcast. I have loved listening to so many of the episodes. There's so much value in it that I just feel very, very privileged to be part of it.
That's what I'm talking about. I've got some great guests coming up as well, and you were one of them. You are absolutely one of them. I've got another guy coming in talking about communities and stuff.
Fantastic.
And if you are on a journey of becoming a coach, I'm gonna give you away the best free information for everyone. And Tess, I think you'll 100% go, oh, don't disagree with that in any way whatsoever. For you as a coach, growing in the coach, one of the best and free ways is to grow your coaching business is collaboration.
Absolutely.
Collaboration costs nothing. It gets you wider engagement. It gets you onto other people's conversations and lists. Come from a place of abundance, not scarcity, and collaboration is 100% abundance for people. And I think when coaches get into that mindset of abundance and collaboration, your business will soar, as I'm sure we've seen ours soar.
I agree. And there's nothing nicer than speaking to a peer, somebody who's in the same industry as you, and you can support each other. Yeah, I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah. As always, if it's in the mind, it can be managed. Big love from Cuddy and Tess.
Thank you, guys. Happy listening.